And today we're going over our old friend Etsy, which is, and that's ETSY, and that's in the consumer discretionary ETF, which is having its own problems. And we'll go over the XLY in our ETF letter today. So remember, folks, if you want to live on this beach like Jimmy Buffett, you've got to learn how to invest even better than Warren Buffett. And let's see what Etsy is all about. Well, it operates a marketplace. Yeah, think of eBay, where people around the world connect both online, offline, and make, sell, buy handmade items, vintage goods, craft supplies, and unique goods. Etsy's revenue is diversified, generated from a mix of marketplace activities and the services it provides, such as transaction and listing fees, promoted listings, direct checkout fees, and shipping label sales. For sellers, it offers a range of key business tools and services, and Etsy connected 2.7 million sellers and 46.4 million buyers, and that is double over the past year and a half to 2 years. So those numbers, 2.7 million sellers and 46 million buyers, are double the last time we went over this stock, which was about 2 years ago. So the first thing we want to look at is the net income. Now remember, net income is the clean surplus earnings. You take traditional accounting earnings, you take away non-recurring items that are not associated with the business, like the owner's car and the owner's wife's car or the owner's husband's car and all those cars that are written off on the business. You take away all that stuff and you get a number that is strictly the income from the business operations. And that way we can compare net income with Etsy, with net income with Amazon, with Apple, et cetera, et cetera. So we're looking at the net income, clean surplus, which are the clean surplus earnings, and we can see that this stock is now starting to have more of a return than it ever did before. And that's very, very important, because this year for 2023, we are looking at $3.50, but it made $3.40 during the COVID period when everything was shut down and these kind of sites were proliferating very, very well. And now we're above that number finally or projected to be above that number for 2024. When we look at the clean surplus return on equity, we see that it likes to stay around this 20 something number, even in the averaging in the mid-20s here. So that's a very, very good sign, because consistently stays above the 20%. Now, what's 20%? 20% is our threshold for a stock in our growth portfolio. 13.5% is the average stock. So remember, if we want to outperform the S&P 500, we want above average stocks in our portfolio. And remember that over any 10-year period, 96% of professional money managers, and those are the folks who run the publicly traded mutual funds, 96% of them cannot outperform the S&P 500 over any rolling 10-year period. And that was a research study which was published by Morningstar way back in 2022, and I keep up on that number, and they're 100% correct. So back to talking about retention, this company, all the money it makes, it puts it back into itself in order to grow. How do we know they're doing that efficiently? Because we keep an eye on the clean surplus return on equity. As long as this number stays above 20%, that means they're employing the money that they are making and retaining into themselves in order to grow. They are making the same profit on that as they were last year and the year before. So those are the kind of numbers that we look at, and that little circle that I just mentioned is very, very important when we look at retention rate. We like retention rate of 100% because that means the company is still growing. And one thing about Etsy, because we have questions on it that we'll get into in a few minutes. One thing about Etsy is I see them advertising on television all the time. So that means they're using that money for advertising, and because of the clean surplus return on equity staying up above 20%, that means that people are listening and using the site because Etsy is making money on their advertising. All right, net income growth over the past 5 years has been 63%, but that is because, don't forget, we have COVID in there, and these kind of sites made money during COVID, and therefore we have to be a little bit suspect of the net income growth 5-year average. But for next year, they expect a 24% net income growth, which is about double the average stock out there. Now, it doesn't pay a dividend, which we like. We want to see all the money go back into the company. And then revenue growth, it has averaged 30.2%. But for this year, 2023, we're only looking at revenue growth of 1.1%, and that will show up in one of these next slides. And for 2024, they expect revenue growth of just 6%. So this is what's hurting this stock right now. Also, years to pay debt, 4.2. Remember what this is all about. This is one of Buffett's rules, and he says that if a company takes all the money it's making and uses it to pay off its debt, how many years will it take to do that? His rule of thumb is 5 or less. Our rule of thumb is really 3 or less. So this sits between Buffett's rule of thumb and our rule of thumb, and we want to see this number as small as possible because with interest rates going up, or maybe they've reached their peak, but anyway, they're higher than they were a couple of years ago, it takes more money to pay off their debt. So that's something that we think about. Well, now let's look at a chart and see how easy this is. The blue line is the average stock, and we're looking at the clean surplus ROE. The average stock of about 13.5% ROE. Etsy, about 25% ROE. Net income, the average stock of 13%. Etsy at 24%. Nice, almost double. And then revenue, a little below the average stock. So the average stock is bringing in 7.1% increase in revenue, while Etsy is now up to 6% for next year, for 2024. So it's catching up to that. So this is the only thing that's holding us back a little bit in here, folks. And when we look at year to date, so this is since the beginning, January 1st, the black line is the S&P 500. Etsy was doing fine, and then it hit the skids because of growth of only 1.1% in revenue for this year, 2023. So this is what's hurting their stock. The people look at that and say, hey, it's not growing. Why am I paying a premium for a stock when it is growing less than the average stock this year? And I'm talking about revenue income. And then lately it has been bouncing off that bottom, so we'll see what happens as the year goes on. Now, over 1 year, so it looks like a whole, just for a couple of months, just for 6 months difference, we can see that Etsy was doing very, very well until it started slowing down on the revenue. Came back down to meet the S&P 500. But for the past 1 year, it's up a little over 30%, with the market up a little over 15%. So it's still doing pretty good. The key is it going to catch on? Are people going to still go there? Because don't forget, you have Amazon out there, you have eBay out there. It's a tough situation to be in, but people are telling me that Etsy is special and it has specialty items, and that's why it's doing as well as it is. Now, when we look over 5 years, same kind of pattern as over 1 year. You could see it did very, very well. Now, each one of these rectangles, this is 2023, this is 2022, this is 2021, and this is 2020, the year of COVID. Here's COVID down here. So as soon as COVID hit, the stock reacted to the downside, and then people said, well, people are going to stay home. Oh, I'm staying home. We're all staying home. And they would be using Etsy more and more. So for 2 years, it had a magnificent run, high ROE, making high money. And then all of a sudden, for 2022, when the market got hit and sales started slowing down, people said, well, they're not going to buy online. And whatever the reason, this stock really hit the skids and then bounced up and now is playing around. But still, with the market up 50%, this stock is up about 120% over the past 5 years. So it depends where you bought it. And folks, we bought it back in here. So that was, but still, even if you bought it here, you're breaking even right now. You've had your euphoria, and then you had your depression, and now we're back where we were back in 2020, or right about the middle of the year of 2020. But if you bought it down here, and some people did, you're still making a nice profit on it. The key is, do we hold it? And that's a big, big question. So, folks, we have that question on our mind, and right now we're thinking about Etsy because it is in our growth portfolio. Are we going to keep it there? Well, we have to find another better stock, and we may have. Just a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about a stock, and we'll go over that. You subscribers already know about that stock, and we did a Saturday report on it, so everybody that is getting this letter knows about this stock. So Etsy, it's in question. Is it going to be replaced by another stock? And we'll see. It'll be a close call, folks, believe me. And we'll compare those two stocks in about a week or two. So, folks, we had a pretty challenging week this past week because the market is doing a little reversion to the mean, as you'll see in our Saturday market recap, and we'll go from there. So, folks, clear your heads, go for a walk on the beach, enjoy the summer. Hope it's not raining. Have a barbecue, be with your family. Stay safe, and we'll see you back here on Monday.